see you, Mackenzie. Very good morning.
Good morning, Vivek. Good to see you.
So we have people joining in live. We are also live on YouTube. Mackenzie, thank you for doing this. This is your story. This is a story about death. Most expected event in every life. Mm-hmm. It gets scripted the day we are born. But it is the hardest to explain or accept. Mm-hmm. Whether we lose someone or we face it at an even more personal level. A terminal illness changes our world. I experienced it. I experienced it in a very close family member, and I went into denial, disbelief, and anger for the longest period of time. Not sure what the natural response to such an event is. And then I met you, Mackenzie. You were returning home with your mom from one of your treatments. I did not realize that the next 3 hours of our trip together would challenge my grief, my anger of the last 2 decades. Your story absolutely needs to be heard. It changed my perspective. It became my pressure valve. Undaunted and unshackled, you have carried your terminal illness with an audacity that is worthy of a bestseller. You were diagnosed at 21. You were declared terminal at 26, and you had months to live. You are now, and I'm going to say it, you're now 31. From 21 to 26 to 31. Mm-hmm. Wow. And you are busy. You're very busy executing on your plans you have for death. And you're taking every day at a time. And today happens to be one of them. So welcome. So what are we going to expect today, Mackenzie? How are you creating magic?
Well, first of all, thank you, Vivek, for all of those kind words and allowing me to share my story. So what we can expect today, the unexpected, I guess. That's usually how it goes. And how am I creating magic? I think magic exists around us at all times if we let it. And oftentimes we're kind of stuck in the same thoughts or routines, and we live the same story over and over again. But when we start to break out of those thoughts, those routines, and we really let in, the rest of the world and newness, and adapt to, our changes, that's when magic happens. So, yeah.
So do you plan it? Do you plan every day? So when you went to bed last night, did you think these are the few things I am going to do on Saturday? Did you carry the magic potion for the next day in your sleep so you can dream up the excitement?
I used to, Vivek, I used to try to plan, the day, the week, the month, the next trip. And unfortunately, I always planned with expectations. So I would kind of put a lot of energy into those plans and a lot of hope in them. And it became really disappointing when I had to cancel those plans. And it was a heartbreak each time I had to do that. And so I had to relearn how to make plans without expectations. And I think that that's sort of where real magic has started to happen for me, because it's allowed me to become more adaptable. So a lot of the times, I've had to cancel so many trips, and down to simply a dinner with friends because something in my health prevents me from doing that, or a big, all of a sudden I can't breathe, or I'm coughing up blood, or something's happening and I can't do what I wanted to do. And it would be really, really hard to feel okay with that, because I'd be like, oh, I would be on the plane right now, but instead here I am in the hospital. And it would be this really torn feeling rather than just kind of being present and where I am. And so I guess there's been this shift of, instead of putting all of my hope into something that's not existent yet, put my hope right here. And so wherever I am, I'm okay with that. So instead of, how do I plan something exciting for the next day? I just plan that the next day is going to be exciting. So it's learning to kind of go with whatever it is that's happening and with an open mind and an open heart and be really accepting and present in that.
So how did it start? Because it is interesting what you just said. And I also read one of your articles from a post you have published a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And in one place you said, if I remember, I maneuvered my goals a little, and then basically went back to living like it didn't really happen. So was it denial? Was it disbelief?
Yeah.
And then you said, and then you told me during our trip that the cancer came back with a ferocity and literally just kicked down the damn door with the stage 4 progress. I mean, that was a moment for me when I said, and then how would you change your approach after that?
Yeah, so I'd say that when I was first diagnosed, it was stage 1. So I did sort of the standard treatment of chemo and surgery and that whole deal. And being 21, I was still in college. So I took off a semester and then I ended up being able to graduate with my class. And I was determined to do it. I really wanted to not let cancer define my life. I wanted to do it on my own terms. And but there was a lot of anger and victimhood in the whole experience. I was really denying that I had cancer. I didn't want to have cancer. I didn't want it to run my life or run the show. And I think that when it came back again as a terminal diagnosis where it was in my lungs, it really, the word terminal, I think, changed me. And it took a while to process what that meant. And that, I was only supposed to live about 1.5 years. And so there was a lot of things that I had to go through to understand how to battle those coming months. And then the shift came when I realized it wasn't a battle. It was learning how to coexist with death, and so we're all doing that. We're all living and dying at the same time. And it's this really interesting juxtaposition, but learning that it's not these dualities that are battling each other, but rather they're coexisting. And that creates this more harmonious experience. And I think it deepens us to live a better life because we know that there's a death. So there's just this really nice, connection there.
So the anger that you talked about just now, was it because you were scared, because you were being denied the life that you aspired for? Because 21 and 26 are not the time, not the age when you even believe anything closely like that, right?
Right. Yeah.
What was the primary emotion that you were going through?
I think I was trying to think of the good word for it, but I was really almost jealous. I think I was jealous of other people that didn't have to go through what I was going through. And I didn't understand why I did, and I didn't know how to relate anymore to a lot of people, especially my age when I was in my 20s. Everyone's living their life. They're going on, getting jobs, doing this, doing that, like, having a good time. And there I was being sick and in the hospitals and dealing with, one thing after the other. And little did I know that that was actually far more profound and deeper experience and bringing me wisdom that I would carry with me for the rest of my life. But it took a lot of dark places, to get into the light. So you can't skip that. You can't skip those emotions. You can't skip the anger. You can't skip the grief. You can't skip those things. It's not about not going through them. It's about going through them and keep going. Like you don't stop. It's a process, but like you get to the other side. And I think that that's important for people to take away is that, you can't deny those emotions. They exist. We're human. We have to feel them. But it's about that process of just keep moving, and I think that's sort of something for me that I've used movement in general. I love to run and hike and do all of these things. And it's sort of metaphorical too. So like the farther I run, I know like I can keep going, it's all about just one step, one foot in front of the other. And that's sort of how we get through things. So
it's amazing the way you deal with it. And you have raised this whole relationship with death to a whole different level. You said you not only want to invite death for dinner, but also serve it some pie and ice cream.
Yes.
I don't know how you came up with that, but it is there for everyone to read in your articles.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
how do you invite death for dinner and then serve it some dessert?
So I think that um, I've really come to love death and the whole idea of it, and understanding that my death particularly, um, it's been my greatest teacher, and I think it can be all of our greatest teachers, and I think that's why it's kind of there for us to explore. And when we deny it, or run away from it or fear it, we're denying the inevitable, so it's something that universally we all have to experience, and it's individual, we can't die together. And if we do, we're still dying in our own places. And so there's this really wonderful part about our journey that it ends, and so I think that inviting death to dinner, that concept, like death has enhanced my life so much. And I think that that's sort of so interesting. You wouldn't think that that would be something that somebody would say, but um yeah, I think because it's like there's birth and there's death, and those are the two biggest limitations we have, but by understanding them, like that's how we become limitless, so it's like this beautiful ebb and flow of like the things that coexist.
So on a day-to-day level, what did you do? How did it change the way you went about your day? What activities, what kind of things you started doing that you were not doing before?
So I think that it sort of derailed everything in my life. Um I was working, and I'd gone to school to be a landscape architect, and I was working in an office trying to be a landscape architect. And so, but my career fell completely apart. I couldn't do it. I could no longer go and work and pretend that I could function in that way. Um, and it also tore apart my identity. Like I've lost my hair. There's been times when I haven't been able to do the activities that I love, like run or hike or ski or all these things physically. So I've had to just kind of rework like what I am, who am I, and how do I, if I can't do anything, what if I'm in bed all day, then what do I do? Who am I worthy? Am I, just because I'm not being productive, am I less of a person, or is that bad? So having to kind of find the beauty and to be able to just exist at all. There's something that's so profound in that. And it doesn't matter whether I'm running 20 miles or laying in bed all day, I'm equally as valuable in this world. But there is something beautiful about trying, about trying to run, about trying to create and make things and make beautiful things. Because I think that's part of why we're here too, is to channel the pain and the hardship and the things that hurt into something beautiful. I think that's kind of a lot of the times where creativity really deepens. And for me, I've started to draw and paint and things like that, and especially when I would be in treatments and in the hospital or on planes or whatever, I would be drawing. And so it kind of became this therapeutic thing, but it was this totally, just pure like channeling of something um, through me. And I think that that's sort of a wonderful way of becoming a vessel, and I think we all are sort of vessels to this larger creative.
Did you paint before you were diagnosed?
A little bit, but not the way that I do now.
And I saw some of your paintings. They're absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
So with the terminal illness, is it safe to assume you also get gifted with some special skills? And I know I'm making, I'm trivializing this concept of death, but you are leading me onto it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that when death's, generally speaking, I think all of our greatest fear innately, right? We're animals. That's our instinct, is to avoid death at all costs. So when I think you're presented with your greatest fear, then you kind of, once you realize like okay, that's it. Like, no, I can't walk into an office and someone be like, tell me something scarier than what I've already been told. I can't go anywhere and hear something that's going to terrify me more than what I've already been presented with. So there's almost this fearlessness that develops. So there's, you know, failure doesn't exist anymore. Like, I can't fail at anything because, like, that language no longer exists when you become fearless. And I think that that's sort of something that's the beautiful part about living with a terminal illness, is because really there's nothing scarier than what you're already doing.
It's just remarkable to witness this intimacy you have created with death. It's almost like a lover who is waiting to be embraced rather than trying to be shunned away.
Mhm.
Facing this most expected event in our life, it is easier than the emotional burden of losing a loved one. You facing it is one thing,
Mhm.
but your friends, family, and the support system losing you is another. Does it bother you that your friends,
Yeah,
family, they will be left behind without your physical presence to lean on?
absolutely. And I think that that's the one piece that it does hurt the most. And sort of why, when there's that, if there is a battle, right, that's what it's for, is to try to remain here for a while longer for the people that I love. And um but I think that that's what's so important about each of us befriending our own death more, because I think that the more that we cultivate a good relationship with our own death, the more that we can understand somebody else's. I think the more that we strengthen our death relationship, the easier, not easier, the healthier and more welcoming we can be to understand somebody else's death. And that grief can kind of be eased a little bit, I think, if we can just overall create this better relationship with death.
And I remember when I met you, your mom and you were together. I actually had to look around. Who really was I going to meet? Who was the patient amongst all the people in that specific area?
Yeah.
Because you two were the least affected or had any indications in your body language that there was something wrong going on with you guys. You were just waiting like some passengers.
Right.
And I had to literally look around. Who is the patient that I have to meet?
Yeah.
Where does this positivity come from? And I'm taking your mom's name with a lot of respect. I mean, Pam, she's a remarkable lady.
She is. Yeah.
With the kind of support system that you have, hats off to every one of them. You talked about your brothers, you talked about your family, you talked about your father.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about the support system, how they had to change their approach and how they supported you.
Mm. Well, I think it goes without saying, my mom is an absolute rock star. She's definitely been my biggest support. And I think, um, she's been, the matriarch of our family, and she's just always been a huge positive force in everyone's life. Before I had cancer, before my dad also, who has cancer. Um, so, I think she's been sort of the anchor for all of us. And in terms of like my brothers and my dad, and the rest of my support system, my best friends and lovers and things of that nature, like, I think we all kind of follow suit, and we all take a little bit from each other and realize that this isn't just me that's dealing with this, it's all of us. And so that's sort of been something too that's shifted. When I was initially diagnosed with cancer when I was 21 till now, I thought that was mine. I thought that was my sickness and my thing to carry, and my burden, right? But when I was diagnosed terminal, I realized it's not just mine, right? It's theirs too, and it's ours, and we share these this emotional burden. We're all having to go through it. When I'm sick and hurting, I know it hurts way more to look at that and see that than it does to feel it. So if I'm in pain, I know how much more it hurts them to see than it hurts me physically. So there's, this understanding that we're all in it together. I think that is how it becomes, this bigger picture and this ripple effect of how it affects us. And then, I think that that's why it's this universal language. We all understand pain. We all know somebody that has cancer or who is dying or who has died, or, we all can relate on this level of understanding. And I think that, the more we open these conversations, the more we talk about these pains and these things, I think that, like, it's just this really big ripple effect, and it tugs on all of our heartstrings, so I think that we deepen our connection with each other when we experience things like this.
It was amazing to hear the story from your mom about you going on those hikes,
Yeah.
no cell phone coverage
Yeah.
at this day and age,
Yeah.
and she tracking your GPS. I can tell you one thing, kind of a helicopter parent I am. I don't know how she does it. So I need to get inspiration not only from you, but from her.
Yeah.
So it was all, semi-inspirational to hear her story as well. When she talked about the GPS coordinates and how you guys, communicate with each other is not through a cell phone or a voice call. It is through you sending your GPS coordinates in latitudes and longitudes. So do you want to talk a little bit in terms of how on a day-to-day basis you're overcoming your terminal illness and the way you're dealing with it, the hikes you're doing, the mountains that you're scaling? Where is this, you're such a stubborn lady, it seems to me.
Yeah.
You're almost challenging death. I know you say that you kind of have created an intimacy, but you're challenging death in many ways by scaling the peaks and saying, I dare.
Yeah. I think, both my mom and my doctors at this point know that you're right, I'm stubborn. And there's times when she'll even just have a small suggestion, and the first thing out of my mouth is, don't tell me what to do. And so
you are a child then. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. I'm defiant for sure. But yeah, I think that's just in my spirit. And that's sort of what I think is part of the magic, because the moment someone tells me I can't, I want to. Or even if I have those thoughts, like, how would I possibly be able to do that? Then I'm like, I need to figure out how to do that. And so there's this almost like there's a play with death too. It's like, I see you, but I'm not going to let you get me yet. There's this, but it's like playful rather than running with fear. It's more or less like, I'm still here and I'm engaging and I'm going to live all that I can live and however I can and whatever that day brings. And, ideally I would be, running and hiking and doing all those things every single day. And I try to, and I try to bring that in as much as I can. And even next week, I'm going to try to hike a couple more high peaks. And I had my lung drained last Friday. And so my doctors are like, I think you should be okay. Do you have someone going with you? Is there cell service? There is like that game, because they know I'm going to be in the middle of nowhere or doing something wild. So, but especially my mom, I know she worries more than anybody, but we've created this relationship where she knows that's me, and that's what I do. And I think if I stopped, they would be like, what's wrong? That would be when there would be like a concern, is when I stopped trying to be, pushing the limits. So, yeah.
Wow. So we all today are getting inspired by listening to your story. What inspires you, Mackenzie?
What inspires me?
And who?
Question. And who? Wow. Well, I think everyone. I think everything. I think it's one of those things where I love the idea of not being the same person every day. And I think that there's just this beautiful, huge world, and to be able to see other people thriving and doing these amazing things. I think, that's so inspiring, that we're all going through these different stories, these different trials and tribulations and struggles, and we're all waking up in the morning and continuing on. And clearly my mom's been a huge inspiration for me in my life, and I admire her on so many levels. And I think that a lot of the people that I've become friends with, it's a small group of women, that are in their 30s with metastatic breast cancer, but we exist. And it's really, a lot of them that I've come to know have passed, and it's them that still inspire me too, to keep going, because if they were here, they would be doing the same thing. So there's this community of, of women in this state of being, and it's for all of us, we're each fighting these individual battles, but overall they're like collective, so yeah.
That's great to hear. So we are living in a very, very rare moment, Mackenzie. There's a lot happening in the world with so much of morbidity, especially due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it has unleashed death and grief at a level that we had never witnessed before.
Yeah.
So your story becomes even more front and center, important for us to understand from, because you are learning to cope with something which was very adversarial in a way that has to inspire us, that has to create the magic for us. How do you tell the people who are going through these tough situations, what's your key message? What is that one thing you will tell them to cope with grief?
Keep going. I think that's the only thing we can do. It is keep going. We can't, like I said earlier, we can't deny those real human emotions. And I think that when we do, we interrupt the process. So then it almost takes longer, or we then allow other sour emotions to come in, right? Like the anger or the victimization or whatever it is, rather than like the love. Because I think that that's, the love's always there. It's always kind of present. And when we let grief take its course, then the love can come back to the surface. And I think that that's what grief is. It's love too. It's important to acknowledge that the reason we're grieving is because of love. It's a love lost, but that love didn't go anywhere. When someone passes away, that love doesn't go anywhere. That's what grief is it's like not knowing where to put that love anymore. But then when we find out that like it's inside of ourselves, like that's when grief kind of heals, right? So
you are suggesting let's harness the energy from the challenge, the adversity, and find and rediscover that love and that strongest of the emotion that can actually inspire us and create more positivity.
Yeah.
Well said. So I also sent a message to all the attendees to ask questions, Mackenzie.
Yeah.
It is about your story, and it is also about how that story inspires the others. While we are live streaming on YouTube, there is an opportunity for the participants on this session to ask the questions directly. And I encourage everyone, get Mackenzie through your questions. And I'm going to ask some of them which are starting to appear. So one of the questions that Anisha is asking is, what challenges you the most?
I think what challenges me the most? I think it's that continual battle of trying to not do. It's that getting out of the way piece. I think I still, I'm working on that, but it's hard to get out of the way of yourself, and so I think I still have a tinge every time I can't do something of disappointment, and I'm not quite perfect yet, but it's that keep going aspect where I'm like, I can get over this and will be okay aspect. But there is that level of like, but I wish I could, and so I think that's what keeps me fiery and how I'm still going. So I don't know that I would really want that to go away, but Yeah, I think that's what challenges me the most still.
It's funny you say that, because I go back to a comment between your mom and me where I had said, Pam, what did you eat before giving birth to Mackenzie? I don't know if she remembers and if she's laughing right now, but
Yeah.
were you as stubborn when you were a child,
No.
or you were not?
No, I don't think so. I think
When
I
did
was.
you, maybe this is a question more for your mom than to you, but when
Yeah.
did you really become so stubborn
Yeah.
about everything, especially death?
Right. I don't know. That's a good question. I think it's when I've always been pretty goal oriented. I had what I wanted to do in my head, and life just keeps steering me away from that. But I'm always trying to navigate back. So there's, that give and pull. But um, yeah, I think I've always been stubborn, maybe in my own head to myself.
Okay. So that answers the challenge question, which is very interesting, and your take on it. Um, then there are a lot of other questions which are coming in, and I encourage all participants to, get Mackenzie. So one of the questions that Aparna is asking, she's saying there are others going through similar struggle, but don't have the opportunity or options to do what they would have liked to.
Hmm.
What do you tell them?
Well, I feel like there's been times when I've been in that position, um, when I can't do what I would like to. And I think that's when it's important to get quiet with yourself and really learn how to tune into your intuition. And I think that that's what guides us in general. But when we're being forced to do things we don't want to, it becomes really loud. I think our intuition starts to speak really loudly, and I think it's important to give it room to speak. And so if we're, whether it's we're like having to do some medication that we don't want to do and it has all these terrible side effects, or if we're not able to afford something or go somewhere, or, whatever the limitation is, our intuition can help guide us in how to get to where we want to be. And sometimes we just have to go through whatever that thing is that we don't want to in order to get to the other side to figure out how to keep going. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Any day that is bad, I'm sure there are some good days and some bad days. And actually, this is a question that has come in from Shruti. She's saying, so just continuing and extending what you just said. So there must be some good days and some bad days. How do you deal with the bad ones?
I have to be by myself. I think that's something that I know that the overall support is a huge part of how we can cope with things. But if we aren't in a good space ourselves, it doesn't matter who's around us or how positive they are. We have to find that positivity and that peace within ourselves. So whether it's just taking, 10 minutes to catch your breath and reorient yourself, or whether it's taking, an hour-long walk or a run or something by yourself in nature, or, wherever you can, but by yourself. I think that there's just nothing like that. I think in order to find and to hear that intuition and to touch base, with you, because I think while we all are dependent on each other, if we can't pour from empty cups, so we have to fill ourselves first, and then we can allow support and ask for what we need and give back, so I think that that's something in those darker days for me, I have to come back into me, and then I can kind of navigate the world again a little bit. So yeah.
Getting a little tactical on that.
Yeah.
And I read one of your Instagram posts where you ran till you could not. Then you ran some more.
Yeah.
And then you ran some more till you could still not.
Yeah.
And you continued doing this. There is a physical, I understand the spiritual extension of this event,
Yeah.
I'm unable to figure out is the physical extension and the physical response to a situation like that. We
Hmm.
have our physical
Limitation.
boundaries, envelopes beyond which we break down. The body refuses to respond, even though the spirit wants to fight on.
Right.
How do you overcome that physical limit that you have? Are you, I know you use the word unbounded.
Yeah. Um, well, I think I don't, and I know that again, the people that are worrying, I don't push myself to the point where I know it's dangerous, because there is danger. I know that. And I think, but there's also like that being in tune with yourself and with your body and knowing your limitations. It's going right to that edge, and I think, and it's knowing to back down. So when I was running the other day, which I think is the post that you're referring to, I couldn't breathe anymore, and so I was just coughing, and I was like, I gotta walk, and I had to just cough for a while, and I coughed so hard I threw up a little bit, and I was like, okay, maybe I should just sit here for a minute. And so there's that element where I'm not like, whereas before I would be kind of angry or mad that I couldn't continue or do what I wanted. There's just this overall respect for my body to be even doing what it's doing at all. So I'm kind of like, I want to be loving to it. I don't want to hurt it, so there's not like this aggression, but there is this, you know, I, there's I guess that battle a little bit of like, I want to do this, but I'm going to, do it just enough, to reach that boundary. And it is that physical element, it is that movement, it is getting there that's allowed me to get really in tune. So when I have pain in my body, I really know how to listen, because pain is a language. It's our body's language, it's how it talks to us, pain and pleasure. And so if something doesn't feel good, it's because something's wrong, or whether it's manifesting psychologically or physically, like something's not quite right, and that's our body's way of saying so. So yeah.
Interesting. Even before 21, you were running?
I was, but not the way that I do now.
So just to give the people a sense of, when you say running,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean running around a field of 400 yards. Give us
Right.
a sense of what you run.
Yeah, so actually when I was 21 and diagnosed, I remember it was one of the days after a chemo treatment, and I ran 5 miles, which was around the farthest I would run at that point. And then later that day, I was like, I'm going to run another 5 miles so that I would run 10 miles today. And that was the farthest I've ever run in a day. And then I remember, um, a couple years later when my cancer came back when I was 23, I was like, I'm going to run 10 miles consecutively. And so I ran 10 miles. And it wasn't easy. By no means was it easy. But it was this mentality of challenging my body and my path, and the cancer, and knowing that if I can do this, maybe I can do anything. And when I was, I think I was 25, I decided I wanted to run a marathon. And I had never run a race before. So I trained all through the winter. And I remember each of those milestones when I ran 12 miles for the first time, 16 miles for the first time, 18 miles for the first time. And then on race day, the 26 miles, it was just this momentous thing. And a couple years ago, after being diagnosed terminal, I was like, well, I'm going to run farther. And I signed up for a 50-mile race. And I didn't end up participating in the race. Again, those canceled plans, my health took a course. But when I was training for that race, I ran 30 miles, which is the farthest I've ever run. So there's, in that, there's so much, I think, that I take away metaphorically still, you know, even though I didn't get to run 50 miles when I wanted to, I ran 30 miles. And so by setting these goals, whether I achieve them or not, that trying ultimately gets me to do things that I never would do or farther than I would ever get. So there's this kind of beautiful thing that, I think it's kind of a cheesy quote, but like, aim for the stars, you can still hit the sky. You know what I mean? There's that element of like, even if it seems totally impossible, there's something beautiful about trying to get even close, you know?
I'm trying to process what you just said. In that level of physical pain,
Hmm.
you're not only fighting the pain, but you are stretching your physical limits
Yeah.
by running farther and farther.
Yeah.
Anything else you picked up which you were not doing before the illness? You talked about painting.
Hmm.
You picked up, creating art. And Arshia is asking a question that she loved your art. She loves what
Oh.
you draw. Just a little bit more. How did you? So tell us what inspires you in your creativity, because these are not abstracts. They may seem abstract, but there is a very strong underlying message.
Yeah. Um, it was actually the first drawing that I did that's kind of like, if you can see the drawings, there's sort of a style to them. There's like pen and marker and whatever. They sort of have like a little cohesiveness. But the first one I did was actually for my friend Amy, who is no longer with us, but she's one person that her and I live maybe the 15 minutes from each other. And there was just this really interesting story of we both kind of were diagnosed with breast cancer, and then it went terminal around the same time, and we're the same age. And so we really created this really close bond. And she had her cancer progressed to her brain. And it was shortly after that she had a craniotomy. So she was sending me pictures where they cut into her skull, and there was this huge scar. And I went over to her house and I was like, I need to do something for her. So I drew her a picture, and it's one of the ones it's on my website. But um, that was the first one of that style. And so it was sort of this gift to her of someone that I just found so beautiful and in a place of so much pain, and you can't do anything with pain other than try to make something beautiful. I think in my perspective, it's just, I think the pain is such a great teacher. And I'm really grateful for all of my pain because it's taught me things that I would never have learned, and I think it's humbled me and it's connected me. And it's, I think especially with other people, a lot of people feel really safe to tell me, things that are extremely traumatic that have happened to them, but they feel like they can relate to me somehow because I am open with my pain. And I think that's sort of what the momentum behind those drawings and paintings is just like an expression of channeling pain into something beautiful,
Judy is confirming Amy loved you. And she's saying that the picture you sent her is hanging on her wall.
Oh,
Thank you.
hi, Judy. Oh.
But do you look at art as an outlet for your emotions, your pain, or whatever thoughts you're going through? Do you use that canvas to express yourself?
I think that I used to experience pain differently than I do now. Now, when it arises, I embrace it, whereas before I would try to fight it. And in that, there is a way that translates onto a canvas. It's just the canvas kind of becomes the moment, right? So it's just like kind of taking whatever's going on, and it's letting that energy and that feeling come out, and so I think that that's sort of what happens. And yeah, I don't know.
It's amazing. Judy is sending you hugs, by the way.
Aw.
I have another question from Shubhra. She's saying the physical part that you just talked about, stretching your physical limits, your mental resolve,
Mm.
your will to fight and embrace. What kind of a role is that playing in stretching your physical limits?
Oh, that's the whole thing. I don't think that my body, like, I'm not stronger physically than anybody else. I'm not in better shape than anybody else, and maybe someone would argue that, but it's all mental. It's all mental. That's the strongest muscle. And that's almost what I'm doing when I am running, is trying to strengthen my mind because it's this way of overcoming, the limitations that I have that I think are there. And by exceeding those, I'm shocking myself even, you know what I mean? So there's this element of overcoming my own limitations that I have that are artificial, that we all have. Because, if I was like, go run 5 miles, you'd be like, no, I'm not good. No, I can't do that. But you can, and I think that's something that, we all do to ourselves. We limit ourselves. And by breaking those limits, I think is when we like start to teach ourselves how limitless we are. And we all, we'll break one and then we'll set another one. And then we'll break that one and we'll set another one. But we're always trying to like confine or define how far or how much or whatever it is, or how great or whatever, we can be. But we're limitless, I think, is something that teaches me. And it is a strengthening of the mind more than anything.
You used the word pleasure at one point, pain and pleasure together.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit in terms of this dichotomy, because you're dealing with pain, but you're creating pleasure and you're leaning on pleasure. How does that combine together with the way you're trying to fight and embrace death?
Well, I think that we all deserve pleasure, right? We all are born with that right to have pleasure and happiness. And I think that those two go kind of hand in hand. Is pleasure, happiness, and joy are all, this bundle of what we would call good or something, but I think that we should always be pursuing those things. We should always be trying to feel the best we can feel, to do the things that make us happy, to bring and cultivate more joy. Always. That's always what we should be doing. And if those things aren't existing, then we should be seeking them or finding out why they're not. And again, those are those limitations. I don't deserve it. I can't. That's not for me. Like, maybe someone else can be happy. I can't be happy. This, I don't have the job, the money, the this, the that. Those are all our limitations that we've set and created for ourselves. But they're not true. And we can. And it's like, if I can sit here with cancer in my liver, my lungs, my bones, my eye, and be like, here I am. And I've had a great morning, and, I'm going to have a great rest of my day. Then we all can do that. We can all get to that point. And there is a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, but what else is there? Why sit and suffer? Why sit and things and confine ourselves to anything other than joy, when we have that ability?
So much to process, so much to learn, so much to get inspired from. There is always a moment in our acceptance when, rather than being a victim, you turn it around, and there is a point of inflection where you say, I choose not to be a victim. I'm going to do something about that. There is that one moment that triggers it. Did it happen for you?
Absolutely.
What was that?
I think it was when I was on that trail that you talked about, where I was sending the GPS coordinates to my mom. That was one of the most profound experiences of my life, those days, because no one was around me to console me or to tell me things were going to be okay. And so I just got to get really deep into the story that I was living, and that I was sick of being terminal. I sick of having these treatments. I was sick of having to travel for them. I was sick of it running my life. I was sick of being sick. And I just let all of that sit and simmer, and I cried, and I walked, and then I cried, and I was walking and crying and sobbing and for days, for 11 days, I did that. And I walked 140 miles with my dog with a 60-pound pack. And I came out of that a different person, because I left that victim on the trail and I came out somebody else. And that was that moment of, again, why I say, like, you can't skip grief. You can't skip anger. but that was how I moved through it. And it's because I really sat there and I allowed it to be, because I wasn't distracted by anyone telling me otherwise, so it was this really profound moment of letting the victim die.
Congratulations
Thank
for
you.
having lost that victim.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit because, you were on your happy trail. You're going through your own transformation and going through all these emotions. What's happening with your family behind? Because you're sending GPS coordinates. My son, every time he takes a flight, I need to know his flight details, which airport he's landing at, what is his seat number. How did your parents and your family come to terms with the fact that they were going to let you be on the trail for the next, I don't know how many days, by yourself and very sick?
Yeah. I don't think I gave him an option. I
How about
think I
you?
was like, I'm doing this. And I think that that's, something that there's a trust too, that, and my mom's made a good point of this to doctors. Like, I don't cry wolf. If I have pain, it's real and there's a problem. And I should probably be going to the emergency room. And so I think that that's something that, you know, is true to other things too. Like, if I'm going to say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. Like there's no like wiggle room really of like what, when I get my mind set on something, it's probably going to happen, So um there's that trust, I think that they're like, well, if she's in trouble, she'll know and she'll take the course of action that she needs to, like I think that everyone kind of knows that I know my body pretty well at this point in terms of like, if there's a real issue, I know.
So do you share your anchors that ground you with your support system as well? For example, Pam, and I know I'm taking your name a lot many times than you probably were expecting, but it is true. Because facing adversity is one thing. Seeing someone you love so dearly facing it is another.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy.
No, it's definitely
right?
not.
How do you have your friends, family, the support system cope with this? What do you tell them?
Well, I think that, I think that I try to express that their happiness is their responsibility too. So, whatever it is that they need to do for themselves, that they need to do that, and I think that that's something where, again, you can't give from an empty cup. So that's sort of like, in order to best take care of me, they need to best take care of themselves. And so that's sort of like, my bottom line. And there's been experiences where I've had to cut people out of my life because they weren't doing that. And so then that falls on me, and I don't have any, I can carry some weight, but I can only carry so much. So there's, and I think that that's, again, that element of knowing how to cultivate joy. Sometimes you have to, there's sadness in it, and we have to like trim some leaves in order to let the other ones grow. So there's, there is this element of knowing when we're on our path to becoming a better person, or, whatever it is. Like sometimes people do get left behind, but overall, that's sort of the thing, is if we're all taking care of ourselves the best we can, that's the best we can do. And that's the best way we can be there for other people.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
So Laura wants to know, do you have spiritual anchors that help you that you can share with us?
Mm.
Thank you,
Well,
Laura. That's a great question.
it is a great question. I've always been, I guess, a spiritual person. I don't have a religion that I affiliate with, but I do feel strongly that we all have a soul and that we have a spirit, and we're just in these bodies temporarily. And that's actually brought me a lot of peace, because when I think about it in that way, that we're all just visiting, we're in these little temporary homes, there's something really wonderful for me and peaceful for me in that experience, and knowing that my little human brain doesn't know what that means exactly, and that we're not supposed to, maybe. But I also have recently done like a meditation retreat where I received a blessing from a guru in India, and that had a week-long retreat of meditating, and that really connected me to something, I think, a lot deeper. And meditation in general, I think, connects us to in connecting, and doing that, and
And
feeling.
how did you find him? Why him? Why someone from India?
Well, I actually was connected through my brother's financial advisor. She also had breast cancer, and she found me on social media. She read one of my posts where I was kind of like pleading with my body to let me stay, and she just saw that and was like, you need to experience what I've just experienced. And so there's sort of this gift, I think, in our technology of being able to connect on this global level. And so she's Indian, but I don't know if that's how she got connected with him. But there's just this, I think, this resonant, energy that we kind of connect and make connections. And even you being my pilot, you know what I mean? I think that there's just these little serendipitous moments that bring us to these connections that we can't deny, and so I think there's something wonderful about that.
It helped you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more.
So before that retreat and that blessing, I was probably in the worst states physically that I've ever been. I was, all of my masses had just gone berserk, and I had never had cancer in my eye, but it went there and it tore my retina. So I lost a lot of vision in my right eye. My liver was in absolutely excruciating pain, where I was taking, high doses of morphine every day and wearing a heating pad. I ordered like a battery powered heating pad so I could strap it on all day long. And I couldn't even get up a flight of stairs without, needing to take a few minutes to catch my breath. And after that blessing, and during that meditation retreat, everything just started to come together. And I had just started a new medication, but it was like maybe 2 or 3 days prior. So there wasn't enough time for it to really start working. It was just sort of this harmonious thing where everything was like working together. And within a few days, I was running again, and I wasn't wearing the heating pad anymore. And there was just this kind of comeback that I wasn't really expecting. And it was so, miraculous in my world. Again, these limitations, but it was, everyone was kind of like, what? What just happened, and it was really beautiful. But I think it's those moments, that we get shocked by when we've been so just like one thing after the other going wrong, and finally something goes right. There's just so much like absolute power in that,
We can probably continue for hours to listen to you. And well, I'm just kind of noticing the time. We're top of the hour.
Yes.
It's just been incredible. I don't even have words to describe what I have personally gone through, not just today, but even before, and the kind of a significant impact it has had on me personally as well. It just has been amazing to hear your story, Mackenzie. It resonated with me from day one. I've been very transparent about it. It will resonate with some.
Yeah.
I can almost guarantee it will inspire many. But one thing is certain, it will create magic for everyone. Thank you, and thank you for sharing your most amazing love affair with the most dreaded illness. We are all going to die.
Yeah.
The day we were born, that became our final truth.
Yes, it did.
But I think what you told us today is the goal is not to live forever.
No.
But create the magic that will live forever. So I just want to wish you the liveliest of the journey ahead, Mackenzie.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
we are absolutely proud of your soul's visit to planet Earth.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you for this opportunity to share my story.
God bless you.
Thank
And thank you everyone for participating.
Yes, thank you, everyone.